Hello! Welcome to another Bible Story Children's Time. Today is Tuesday. Welcome. So, here we are talking about Moses and God's bid to set the Hebrew people free from Egypt. And when we last talked, God had convinced Moses that he was the right guy for the job. And Moses went back, told his father-in-law that he needed to go to Egypt to free the Hebrews. And father-in-law just said, okay, got to do what you got to do. So Moses packed up Zipporah, his wife, and their son, and headed to Egypt. And once he was in Egypt, he talked to Aaron. First of all, he had a bit of a reunion with Aaron, his brother. And they talked, and Moses explained what he was there to do. And he explained what Aaron's part would be. He said, hey, Aaron, my chair is creaking. Brother, you know I don't talk very well. So I need you to be my mouthpiece to Pharaoh. I need you to say what I want you to say, which is really what God wants you to say, but it'll come through me. Are we good with that? And Aaron said, yeah, okay. And Moses, through Aaron, also spoke to the leaders of the Hebrew people and said, hey, guess what? God's been listening. And God wants you to be free. So I'm going to go talk to Pharaoh, and we're going to arrange a little something. That sound good? Of course, they were all ready. So Moses and Aaron went to Pharaoh, and it didn't go quite the way they expected it to. Because Moses through Aaron, presented the plan that God had told him to lead with, which was really kind of a trick. Because what Moses said is, hey, our God commands us to worship him, and the only way we can do that is to have like a long weekend, a 3-day weekend, and we can go out into the wilderness and worship and celebrate our God. So you're good with that, right, Pharaoh? Pharaoh was not a very enlightened person as far as labor relations went. Because he basically listened to what Moses said and went, sure, right. Who is this God you're talking about? I don't know him. He looked around at his advisors. Said, any of you know this God that the crazy man's talking about? No. We don't know this God. This God is not my God, certainly. He's not any of our gods. So why on earth would we listen to what you want us to do or what you claim your God wants us to do? And Moses said, well, listen, I don't know what to tell you. This is what God says. Give us 3 days to go out into the wilderness and worship. Pharaoh just is flabbergasted by the idea. He says, come on, get real. You guys, you're lazy. That's what it comes down to. You want a 3-day weekend so you can go off into the country and do whatever it is you want to do out there. And that's because you're lazy. So there is no way I'm going to let you do that. And Moses said, I really would like you to reconsider and to give us this chance. And Pharaoh says, no. I am not going to reward lazy and shiftless people by letting them off for a long weekend. Pharaoh was like every bad boss anybody's ever had at a job. And there was just no changing his mind. His heart, as God would say later, has been hardened. In fact, it was hardened so much that Pharaoh said, and you know what? You guys are making bricks. That's kind of your specialty, right? But, if this is just not your thing, maybe it's not, maybe it's my fault. Maybe it's too easy for you. And that's making you lazy. So here's what I'm going to do. We're not giving you straw anymore to mix in with the mud to make bricks. You know how you need straw to hold the mud together? It reinforces, it's like, biological rebar. Well, no, we're not doing that anymore. You guys, if you want to put straw in your bricks, you can go out, find the straw yourselves. But we're not supplying it anymore. You need something else to do. You need more work, apparently. So maybe this will do it. You go find your own straw and make bricks. And by the way, the number of bricks you make, the number of bricks we require you to make, is not going down. Just because it's going to take longer. Same number of bricks every day, that's your quota. Deal with it. So Moses went back to his people and told them what had happened. And they went out throughout the land, we're told, gathering up whatever stubble they could of straw to go into making bricks. Because their life was already really hard. They didn't want to make it worse by disobeying Pharaoh. And then as Pharaoh thought about it more, he looked at what they were doing and he said, no, you know what? I am right. These guys are just lazy. You can watch them. You can see that. So he told his people to work the Hebrews harder. And the Hebrews went to the foremen and told them they needed to work their people harder. Do you remember, have you ever seen the sign, if you're in an office particularly, you may have seen a sign that says, the floggings will continue until morale improves? That's kind of what went on. Because between the foremen and Pharaoh's underlings, they just made it worse and worse and worse. And finally, the people started to complain to Aaron and to Moses, and they said, okay, guys, you were going to get us out of here, and instead you've made things like 1 billion times worse. So, stop it. Go apologize to Pharaoh. Do something. Don't make it worse, okay? So Moses turned to God and explained what was going on, just in case God wasn't paying attention. And God said, I had hoped Pharaoh would see the light, but obviously it's not going to be as easy as I thought. So I want you to go back and demand that Pharaoh let your people go. And if he won't listen to you, I want you to take your staff, because Aaron was the one doing the talking. Aaron was the one holding the staff. He said, Aaron, Aaron should throw the staff on the ground and it'll become a snake again. That should do the trick. It worked on Moses. So Moses and Aaron went back to confront Pharaoh. And of course, Pharaoh said no. Moses said yes. And Moses said, here, look, here's proof that I am talking for God. I am talking for a powerful, mystical God who's capable of doing supernatural things. Aaron, dude, go ahead, drop the stick. And Aaron threw the staff on the ground and it turned into a snake. And Moses saw the snake and he went, interesting. Magicians, you do the same thing, okay? So he called his court magicians over and they threw their staffs on the ground and threw what Exodus calls the dark arts that they enjoyed. Their staffs also turned to snakes. So you have all these snakes writhing around on the ground. And then Moses's snake, if you want to call him that, turns around and eats the other snakes. And that's kind of impressive, but not impressive enough. Moses says, no, not doing it, not going to happen. You guys work harder, and that's all there is to it. So, another day, and Moses and Aaron went, they talked to God. They got his idea for the next thing to try. And they went back and they waited for Pharaoh to come down to the river Nile, which he did every day. He would come out of his palace, do his morning constitutional and go down to the banks of the Nile. And Moses was waiting there. Aaron was waiting there. And when Pharaoh showed up, they said, hey, let my people go. And Pharaoh said, no. What are you going to do about it? And Moses or Aaron used the stick and bam, the Nile turned blood red. In fact, Exodus says it turned to blood. The canals turned to blood. Everything connected to the water turned to blood. And the people who depended on the Nile for water were actually kind of freaked out. And here's a surprise, it didn't taste very good. And for an entire week, they had to drink and bathe and whatever in this water that had turned to blood. And after a week went by, they went back to Pharaoh and said, all right, you ready to be reasonable? And Pharaoh said, no. In fact, it's just going to get worse. And Moses and Aaron reported this back to God. And God said, I have hardened his heart so that he will not believe me. He will not believe you. But I do this to show the power that I have. Because God wanted his people, the Hebrew people, to know just who their God was. Because he was concerned that over time they might have forgotten how powerful, how wise, how generous he was, how much he cared for them. And he said it, and he said, you know what? I've hardened his heart. This is going to get really ugly, really fast. And it did. But that's a story for tomorrow. And we'll hear about this escalating war that went on between Moses and God and Pharaoh to try to get Pharaoh to release God's people from slavery. Hint, he does eventually do it. But how he got there is the stuff of horror stories. But we'll learn more about that tomorrow. Have a great evening. Stay healthy. And we'll see you right here at 5 o'clock tomorrow.